Westeros!
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast. I'm Nelson.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're the fucking Morning Throners.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We're the Morning Throners. We've got House of the Dragon, episode 6. And man, are they a lot of things going on here. Good, a lot more good than bad, but
yeah, good ep for sure.
Great ep for sure.
As a person who has read the books,
are you angry? You're angry.
No. I'm just saying, as a person who's read the books, and I've read this section of the book very thoroughly, like the section that this first season is based on, I probably read 2 or 3 times before this first season, right? I'm still like kind of confused. Like, wait, who's this? Who's that? Who's this? Because this jump was a lot, and there's a ton of new characters introduced.
Yeah.
And like again, I guess like some of the stuff that I'm trying to keep straight isn't the same thing you're trying to keep straight. Mm-hmm. Like when they're in the dragon pit, I'm thinking like, okay, wait, whose dragon is who's like right. Who has dragons? Whose dragon is who? Like I'm trying to figure all that out. I guess you don't even give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Well, there's just like, so I'm preventing myself from asking questions that I won't like. I watch with Danielle. She's asking me questions that I obviously don't know the answer to, and I'm just like, let's just watch. Like, so I'm just like waiting for them to feed me the answer, and like sometimes it doesn't come, and that's fine. Yeah. I'm sure, but sometimes it does. Like the first question is obviously, is this Laenor's kid? And it's obviously not, right? Once you see the other 2 boys, you're like, okay, that seed's not strong. But so there's a couple things. I think the time jump. So here's my real thing. Did they need to jump this far ahead? Like, I get that there's no story. Like, you kind of told me, like, there's a big jump of years where nothing really happens.
But that's the thing that's correct. I'm going to cut you off real quick. That's correct. And again, it's not a problem that I have because I think what they're doing is good. But it just doesn't make sense where they're jumping to me because, like,
they're sticking to the book in a way.
Well, just like timeline wise, right? Without saying any events, I guess I'll say a few events. And timeline wise, in the books, Rhaenyra and Laenor get married in 114, right, in the books.
Sure. So
this chapter opens with Joffrey's birth. That happens 3 years later, right? So that's a 3-year time jump in the books from the wedding to the birth of the 3rd child.
Wait, so then all of her kids are like 3, 2, 1, like they're a year apart.
Yeah,
that's crazy that she had 3 kids and
they're all like pretty bang 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 right after each other. So again, it doesn't really matter, but like to me, there is a time jump. There's like a 6-year period in the books where nothing happens. But to me, we're just not there yet, right? It's after some of this, like it's after Laena dies, right? It's after that, right? So like, why did we already have the 10-year time jump before? So again, I don't care because what they're doing like is working out as long as it all makes sense at the end. Like I haven't had time to make sure that the ages of all these kids adds up and everything.
Well, it can now. The oldest. Rhaenyra's son has to be like what 10 there. He was like he looked like he was
10 because he
can't be 10.
Born.
He could be 9 and a bit.
Yeah,
or 8 and a bit turning.
Which
9.
Again makes sense, right? In the books, her first children are being born like right after the wedding, right? Because they've already changed some of the ages and stuff. So I think they're going to make sure that the timelines make sense with the ages and stuff.
Age doesn't matter anymore.
I think they're going to make sure it all makes sense. I'm not quite clear on how they've moved it around to make the ages make sense.
Well, it just really, so there's a couple things with the time jump. I don't like just coming in.
So hold on real quick. I'll say one thing before you get into that is I think part of the reason they're doing it is I think there's a bigger age gap between Alicent's children and Rhaenyra's children. You know what I mean? And in the show, there seems like they're pretty comparable in age. Like there's still an age gap. Like they said when there's training, like when they were training, like you're gonna let the elder fight the elder. But it's comparable. I think it's like way bigger. It's like a 10-year difference, I think, in the books.
Really, Aemon should be just older than Jacaerys, you would think.
Like 3 or 4 years, exactly. But
but not in this show. Not in this show.
I think so I think in the show, yes, but in the books, not true.
He wasn't born. He wasn't born yet before the wedding.
Yeah, but so hold on.
She wasn't even pregnant. Was she even pregnant? No. Maybe like just pregnant.
Sure, but Aemon was only what, like a year old at that point.
He was like 2. Well, the daughter was born.
Aemon was at least 3 because he had the 2-year. Aegon. Yeah, Aegon was at least 3 because he had the 2-year birthday was the 1 ep.
Right.
Then that was 2 eps later. So he's about 3. So there's a 4-year difference, right? So a 4-year difference max between Aegon and Jace, who Jacaerys.
Right. And so then Aemond can only be just older than Jace because...
Or, comparable, about the same age, maybe.
About the same. Yeah. And maybe a little bit older, but he looks a lot older standing next to...
Because neither Rhaenyra or Alicent were pregnant in the last episode, right?
I mean, Alicent might have been, like, at the beginning stage of being pregnant, but still, like, that's only a year older. So...
Before we get into anything, new intro. I was right. I was texting you about some of this.
Yeah, I was trying to pick it up. I couldn't pick anything up. I saw like maybe
it's hard. I'm gonna have to go back. I was guessing on some of it.
It's so fast.
The one thing I noticed was the first new symbol, I think, is Daemon's helmet with the dragon wings.
Daemon's helmet, yeah. I saw that too, and I didn't remember that from before.
Like viewers like you don't know that. Like I knew Daemon was going to get married to Laena, so I was like expecting. Like I saw another symbol that was like weaves interact. It looked like a braid almost.
Yeah,
but it looked like a braid. So I saw that, and I'm like, I'm guessing that's Laena because they just showed Daemon, so I'm guessing that's Laena. And then they showed Rhaenyra again with more blood coming out, and then going to 3 symbols. And again, I'm guessing that's her 3. Like Jace, Luke,
children.
So what was it? Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey, but they call them Jace, Luke, and Joff. So Jace, Luke, Joff are Rhaenyra's 3 children.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought that was cool. I'd definitely have to slow it down and look at it again.
Yeah, but so definitely a new intro. Keep an eye out for that. But it starts with another burst scene, kind of crazy.
Yeah. So before we get into the chronological, I just want to make some comments on this episode. I didn't care so much for the time jump just starting this episode with the new characters. I felt like that's kind of like a bad goodbye to Millie. And maybe, again, maybe not everyone feels this way. I'm sure the directors were like, well, we didn't want it to be like goodbye, Millie. They just wanted it to seem like it was seamless, right? And that it's not actors, it's characters, and they play this character.
You're saying you wanted like the time jump to happen mid-ep is what you're saying.
I wanted just like a little like Millie flashes some water on her face, and then she becomes old.
Yeah, gotcha.
Emma Darcy.
And I like most of the stuff. I'll say one thing, and I don't know what it was. Like I wasn't a big fan of the Laenor actor. I feel like he was not at all like the Laenor. Like the character of Laenor didn't feel the same.
Didn't resemble him
look-wise, but also just like personality. It didn't seem like the first one seemed more stoic, like not as like talking all the time.
I mean, it's been 10 years.
The new one seemed almost fun. Yeah, people change, but the new one seemed way more like fun and like almost outgoing. The old one was like.
Well, he's got no. I mean, it kind of showed why he would be that way in this episode because, I mean, Rhaenyra points to it like, look, you've been here drinking the wine, you've been wiggling your sword. I thought you liked that quote. I'm sure you wrote it down. Waggling your sword and winking at your soldiers.
Because I have the sword penis parallel. I didn't write that one down, but yeah.
I definitely wrote it down just to bring it up to you. But he's just like living his best life at court now. Like he's not even fathering his children.
Yeah, and he knows it.
Or acting the father. Like you would think that your quote unquote kids getting their ass kicked out in the yard and you're a soldier, you wouldn't want to like coach your kid up a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, they're not doing a very good job of playing this off. And I think Rhaenyra is trying to get him to. I just think that he doesn't. I think the two problems are Laenor doesn't really have an interest in the children that aren't his, which kind of makes sense. And the other problem is Harwin has way too much of an interest in the children, right? So those are the kind of the two big problems in this episode that lead to the conflict.
There's another, just so like saying goodbye to Millie and even young Alicent. I don't know what that the actor's name is for young Alicent, but I don't know. At least, I mean, young Alicent and old Alicent have a really. They could have been sisters.
They look so sweet.
You know what I mean?
They look the exact same.
I'm not buying the Millie to Emma.
They're close, but yeah, it doesn't. It's not the same as.
It doesn't feel the same. Like they don't sound the same. They don't like all.
I think I definitely buy it. I buy it way more than the Laenor jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not there yet.
Emily Carey is who played young Alicent.
Okay.
Amelia Alcock. Yep.
Another thing, and I think we mentioned this on some previous episodes. It's really easy to kind of stay focused on, or it's maybe just conversations that I've been having with people because it's the talk of the town, right? Is every Monday you talk about House of the Dragon episode.
Water cooler talk, yeah.
You could focus on just the Targaryen storyline, right? Like it wasn't what's going on in the Reach, what's going on in the North, what's going on the Wall, across the Narrow Sea. Like we're really just kind of focused on one family, and it doesn't feel that way anymore. You kind of got stuff going on all over the place, whether it's now it's Rhaenyra's family, Alicent's family, Daemon's family. Like, we're starting to kind of spread the
it's still all in the same location, but the factions are definitely starting to become more clear, right? Like, who's on whose side is starting to become more clear, which is cool because that's something that like was never clear in the books. And the one thing is, like you say, like, what's canon in the books. I've seen interviews where George was like, the reason I was able to write a 700-page book, Fire and Blood, and get that out, and everyone's like, when's the winner? Why can't you write that? Is because I didn't have to make choices. I didn't have to decide like, oh, if Larry's is behind this, then how does that work with this? Like, he's like, I just kind of left it up like, oh, who knows what happened here, and then I moved on to the next thing. Like, so George doesn't have like a master plan of this is exactly how it worked. He said there's no rules
that he had to like stay behind or like make sure he fell into a trap of something going wrong. He just omits it,
exactly, without going too far down the rabbit hole. Like, there's a part of the reason why he says Dance of Dragons took so long is because he was trying to figure out how to make everything in Marine work, right? And he couldn't figure out how to make everything in Marine work because there just wasn't people there. And he ended up solving the whole problem by making a new POV character, right? Not making up a character, but making a character who was already there all of a sudden have POV chapters. And that kind of solved how he could do Marine, right? But back then, he's like, it's because he has a plan and everything has to make sense. In Fire and Blood, that book, like, it doesn't have to make sense. Like, when he's stumbling with like, oh, how is this going to work? He can be like, who cares? And he just throws in like 3 different options that maybe he's playing with and moves on, right? So here, they're kind of having to figure some of this stuff out. So like, for example, and I'm again jumping around a little bit, but there's a fire at the end. We find out like kind of who's responsible for that. And that's like something that in the books, we never know who's responsible. There's like a bunch of theories put out of like who could have been behind that. And now we're getting definite answers.
So do you think these directors or the writers of the script are making these choices? Or
yeah,
you
for
think
sure. They're making the choices and running them by George is what I think is happening.
You think George, like, all right, cool, like that'll be a good story, like he just approves it. I'm sure he's had like a little bit of a say, like, hey, I would lean towards Larys being the one that caused this, or.
And even if George has, if they have an idea that they really like, and he's like, hey, and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, I don't really like that, and they're like, I don't care. They have the final say, not George. So it's not like he can veto anything if he really wanted to.
I'm sure they're taking him.
From all the conversations, like there's been conversations with George since the final filming, and he's seen it the entire season before, like we've seen any of it, right? And he's happy with everything, right? There have been, I'm sure there's been things where he's like, I wouldn't do it that way, and they did it that way anyway. But yes, there's consultations there.
Yeah. All right, let's jump in because it's a long. I'm sure we'll be here for a while. Yep. Let's get going. Birthing scene, Joffrey. Pretty. I mean, it's tough to listen to. Like the noises that they had going on in the scene were kind of, it's like something coming through a gushy. It just sounded goofy. Like the sound effects were.
Have you ever seen YouTube videos of people doing like sound effect, like being the guy like making those? It seems like such a cool job where you just like have tomatoes and you're just like smushing tomatoes or like.
Yeah, I wonder what that person was like squeezing or doing something to try and simulate a baby crowning.
I always wondered too, like in scenes where they have like TV shows and movies where there's like a baby that young, how do you get a baby? Like, how do you get a baby that young? You know what I mean? Like, do they have somebody like pregnant and they wait till like she gives birth and they're like, okay, roll, swap it in? Like, there's no way, right? Like, that's dangerous for a newborn baby, but that's a fresh baby.
Well, it's also funny because babies come out like covered in,
that baby was.
Was it really though?
There's a part where like when she kisses it and there's like blood on her face for the rest of the scene.
Okay. But
maybe,
they also have,
I haven't seen a real birth, so maybe I'm sure there's more. I'm sure it's covered in more.
Their heads are like misshapen too.
Cone,
like they're cone. Like you come out with a pointed head from squeezing through the deal.
Yeah.
Like that baby was perfect. That baby was like light skinned. Like it already had like vitamin D in it and what.
Yeah, it looked good. It's because it's probably like a 3-day-old baby or like a week-old baby.
I mean, I'm sure it was like a week or two old, but it is funny to think about like who gives it. Like, all right, we just had like if you're living in Hollywood, do you like have a child and be like, yeah, we'll sign him up to like be on this
I
casting?
Guarantee it's like you probably get like $2,000 for that, right? So there's like struggling actors who are probably just like, yeah, I had a baby, fuck it, I'll throw this kid in a movie if it'll give me $2,000. You know what I mean? Like, sure. Yeah. And you know what would be if I was
just
a kid,
bragging rights for the rest of your life.
Exactly. If I knew like right now that I was Joffrey Valerian, you know what I mean? That'd be the coolest thing ever. Like, and how can people can just, that's it. One thing about that though is like people just be like, prove it, and I'd be like, it's so hard to prove. But
yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's true. They give you.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Like I've seen some stuff with like childhood. Yeah, they gave him a paycheck. Like they have it framed and whatnot. So Allison wants to see the baby right away. Kind of fucked up that she doesn't wait. Like I don't really like any of the characters. I have no attachment to any character anymore. I don't really care for Rhaenyra. I don't really care for Allison. Probably the only one I really liked was Harwin. Like I was like excited to learn more about Harwin, and he's dead. So
I guess you just spent $30 on a fucking How Strong t-shirt just for the two of the three to get fucking burned up in this episode.
Yeah. Well, they're gone.
I mean, I knew they were going to be gone. But I thought I'd have an episode or two of Harwin like being the daddy. Yeah.
Yeah. And Larys is a rat, so like House Strong is now the worst house there. But yeah, like I don't really like any character. Like I'm just all in it for the story now. I don't care about any character. I'm not rooting for any. Probably Daemon. I think Daemon's probably the best character.
The mystery around Daemon is awesome, right? So like,
yeah,
we find out like very little about him except for he's been not sleeping, up all night, reading
about dragon like just is that just Targaryen or history or basically
from the time Valerian, like when old Valyria was around, there was like a bunch of, basically you have like a Westeros situation where there's a bunch of different houses, but all the houses have dragons, right? Just like all the houses have horses, kind of like in Westeros. It's kind of those were all the dragon lords. So he might have been reading about like old Valyrian houses, but yeah, he's doing some old Valyria research, just like Viserys is with his like model making thing.
Yeah. So pretty badass that Rhaenyra walks up. I mean, couldn't have been like, I can't even imagine going through that and then doing anything, like walking upstairs. Like that was crazy.
I feel like the old, and when I say the old Laenor, I mean like just like the personality of the old one where it's like more like serious would have fit better in this like scene. Like I feel like she did a really good, like kind of like what you're saying. We go from Millie Alcock, who killed it, to like this is I'm sure this is a really hard scene to act, right? Like that's just one shot, a long ass shot of you just gave birth a minute ago. Now you have to walk up 2 flights of stairs. Like that's tough acting, right? I'm sure. And she did a great job. And Laenor just seemed kind of goofy in that scene. Like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like,
oh, congrats, we had a son.
And I don't know. Yeah, and I get that's the point of it, is like he's not taking this stuff seriously, and she is. But I don't know, that scene. I thought it could have been done better if Laenor was a little bit more serious.
To your point, I think it plays off. Like, I think we're gonna see a new Laenor now. Like, all right, she's gonna find out Harwin's dead. So like now there's only one father. Like, no matter what the rumors are, like Laenor, like you can be these kids' father, and no one's like Harwin's not gonna show up at the door knocking or writing letters and putting that doubt in the kid's mind, even though it's probably there, like the oldest one said.
Yeah.
But him just kind of being that way, and she's like playing the game, right? She's playing the game with Allison. That's why she was like, fuck you. Like, unless you're carrying me down these stairs, like we're going, and I'm going. Like, you can come if you want, but I'm going to show this baby off.
Yeah, so we kind of didn't address it. Allison says, she doesn't say, hey, I want to see Rhaenyra right away. She says, I want to see the baby. She just wants to see the baby. Right, which is kind of just like a power move of like, hey, like, it reminds me of like the tree scene where Rhaenyra's like, hey, Bard, keep playing. And Rhaenyra's like,
right.
Or Allison's like, the queen says no. I think Allison's just trying to show like, I'm the boss here. And it's meant to show us as viewers, 10 years have jumped. And like the last we saw of Allison and Rhaenyra was Allison saying like, she was going from calling Rhaenyra sister, like, hey, sister, how you doing? To showing up at the feast in the middle of everything, showstopper, and being like, oh, hi, stepdaughter. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, that's like the I'm in charge of you was the last we saw. And now this is a 10-year jump. And I think the point of that is Allison is really flexing her, I'm the queen, you're the princess muscles here. Like, I can take your baby from you a minute after it's born. And Rhaenyra is like, no, you can't if I am strong enough to just, like, do it myself. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you think you have more power, but I'm physically or personally, I'm the stronger of the two of us. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I took this, is like they're like a power play thing.
She just wanted to see if the baby looked like probably Laena and Daemon's kids, right?
Yeah, that's true too. Like there's already two. Again, this is one of the things where the whole first scene I'm kind of taken out of it, because I know Rhaenyra has these children. So I'm like, which one is it? Which one is it? Is it Jace? Is it Luke? Like they don't mention any, they don't say a name. The whole walk up, they don't mention the name until they're with Allison. That was another thing I was thinking. Like Because again, to myself, I'm asking like, what's the name? Who is this? Like, is this the first one? Is this the second one? Is this the?
It couldn't have been 10 years till she had her first one. I mean, I didn't know, but it was just in my mind.
But again, in the books, like we said, they're all close together. So to me, I'm like this. I thought it was Joffrey, and I'm like, okay, they're just making Joffrey born way later than the other two in the show, which again, I'm not upset with, but that's what I assumed. But I'm like, say his name. And then when they weren't saying his name, and Rhaenyra, they're like, oh, how do you feel? And I thought like she might say like, no worse than the other two or something, to like give a hint to the viewer, like, oh, I've already had 2 kids or something like that. But there was none of that. So I was like, wait, is this Jace? Like, hold on. So, but when they say Joffrey, that's like when I realized. But
I didn't really know. Do you think it was Laenor trying to just like stick it to Rhaenyra, like whatever, it's not actually my kid, but I'm gonna name it?
In the books, he wanted to name all the kids Joffrey after Joffrey, who Christian Cole killed, and he was shut down, I think, by both Rhaenyra and Corlys in the books. Like, no, and then on this,
I mean, it's just like a red flag to people, right? Like, there was rumors, right? I didn't read the book. You said there was rumors that Laenor was with Joffrey
in the books. Like again, like the Macers just talk about it like as a fact. They're like, yes, he was with Joffrey, and they even say he was with this guy Carl, who is the guy who's with now afterwards. Like they're both basically there's not much rumor. Like there's a lot of rumor in the book. The whole Laenor thing isn't really a rumor. It's just like, Laenor's gay, and here's exactly who he's with. Yeah. So. But during that scene, Viserys comes in.
Viserys looks awful.
No arm, super old, hair falling out.
I didn't even notice. He didn't have an arm?
I'm pretty sure he's like missing like most of his arm. Yeah, at least to the elbow.
Oh my God. How did I miss that?
I'm pretty sure
I need to pull this up right now. I mean, keep talking. It's not that.
Yeah, I will say the one thing, there's another thing from the books is that once they get the name Joffrey out, Alicent like goes up to Joffrey by himself and says, keep trying, eventually you'll get one that looks like you. I think in the books that's a more public statement, and I'm not sure if Alicent's the one that makes it, but that's like, again, in Fire and Blood there's very little actual dialogue because it's all like a history book, but that was definitely a quote directly out of Fire and Blood that somebody made about Rhaenyra's children at some point. I think it's probably Rhaenyra.
It's pretty if you didn't know, right, I was looking to see what this baby would look like too, because like Danny was like, is that Sir Kristen? I was like, no, Kristen's not on her side anymore. Like Kristen's he's playing the other side nowadays probably. But whose would it be? And it kind of brings me back to that TikTok I saw weeks ago about Harwin and
like, oh, they'd be a good couple or whatever.
And Rhaenyra, like, oh, they should have been together. Like now it all makes sense of why that fan art was even there. And that's kind of what I mean about. I started talking about this, the 10-year gap. You could have almost made a season probably of House of Dragon up to last episode, I bet, right? Gone a little bit deeper into some storyline. Maybe you had to create some stuff to fill in some time gaps.
I would say up to where we're at now, I think would be good. I think the first half maybe went a little fast for me. Again, I think a lot of people, and this is just for me, I think a lot of people really like the pace. They're like, wow, none of the episodes have felt boring. And if that's how people feel, cool. To me, they feel a little fast, and I'm surprised that people who haven't read are picking up and like understanding everything as much as they are, considering how
I don't know if people actually are. I don't think people actually are understanding. They're just probably feeding for the content afterward. Like they're waiting for someone to explain it to them.
Well, it's fun. It's one of those things that's fun to talk about, right? And like getting it explained, like that was me, right? I watched Game of Thrones. I watched the show before I read the books, and like I started reading the books while I was watching the show, but I don't think I was ever ahead because I started watching the show in like season 3 or 4, right? And basically by season 5, you're at the end of the books. So I was never really ahead in the books, and I was kind of that. I was like always watching on YouTube and like finding theory like that. I think that's one of the things that kind of makes Game of Thrones different than everything else. It is so complicated. You kind of like you get that extra like, oh, I can dig deeper if I really want to get like the extra layer. But at the surface, there's enough.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. So she takes the baby. She ends up leaving. Basically calls Laenor like kind of a bitch. Or like start being here. Like you're not even with me right now. Like I'm by myself. And she just leaves a trail of blood.
She's like, I'm doing everything as she leaves a trail of blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we get into and we see the other kids. Harwin is in the room and Luke and Jace are there.
Yep.
And
it's just like, all right, it's his kid. Like the kids look just like him.
Laenor knows. Laenor is even like, okay, so, like kids, the other two, like to Jace and Luke, like let's get out so that the captain of the guards can see the new baby for some reason. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
that's weird.
It's like, yeah. And Jace is, like we said, like he's not an old kid. He's like 9, but he's to the point where he realizes what's going on by the end of the episode.
Yeah. What do you think? I guess we'll find out. He doesn't believe. He has to think that Harwin's his dad.
Well, she doesn't deny it.
He looks just like him.
Well, Rhaenyra doesn't deny it. She says you're a Targaryen, not a Valerian.
She doesn't deny it, but she doesn't.
She basically says you're my son. That's all that matters.
She doesn't admit it either. Yeah. That is what she's saying. That's exactly what she's saying. All right, wait. I just want to. I got to the part where he's walking in. He doesn't have an arm. That's crazy. How did I miss that? It's a sleeve hanging there. Like his sleeve is hanging.
You know, I'm sure you probably see the thing. It's like the thing in psychology with like there's a white team and a black team and they're passing basketballs back and forth and it's like count how many times
the gorilla walks right in.
Exactly. It's like if you're not looking for it, you don't notice it. Yeah. I didn't notice his fingers missing in that episode, and you did.
Yeah, I did notice. I was ready for that. I didn't even cross my mind that he wouldn't have an arm.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens next? They're in the yard. Oh, they're in the dragon pit.
Yep, dragon pit.
So my first question here, pretty cool scene. Mm-hmm. Like, they're training. I'm trying to just now. This is like kind of where you're confused. It's like,
whose dragon is this?
What are the relationships like? Who has dragons? Why are they all here? If it's just Jacaerys that's getting trained.
The other thing is the kids seem to get along.
The kids,
Alicent's kids seem to get along with.
It seems like everybody but Aegon is picking on Aemond, and Jacaerys is picking on Aemond too, and
they're all picking on Aemond. Yeah,
Aemond is not the youngest one. Like it doesn't usually go like that.
Correct. Well, again, he might in this show he might be the youngest. Like he's got to be close. Like we're saying, he's got to be close to Jace and Luke.
Right. He's either the same age. Maybe Jace is older, but he doesn't look older.
And you're right. In the books, he's like Aemond is older, big time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cool dragon scene. So this is Jace's dragon.
Yeah. Does it have a name yet?
Tyraxes.
What language was that dragon tamer speaking?
Valyrian. So it's weird. Like they didn't subtitle.
Why would they not? Yeah, I guess because they had a translator because the kids don't know Valyrian.
So there is like a little Easter egg here. He says, "Tell him to stay" or something, and Jace yells the wrong thing, but he yells one of the very few like Valyrian words that like you and I would know.
I didn't.
The wrong word. He says tell him to stop. He says Dohaeris, and the subtitles pop up and say serve, right? And the only reason we know that's because Valar Morghulis is all men must die, and Valar Dohaeris is all men must serve.
Yeah, right.
So here he's like, tell him to stop, and he just yells the wrong thing. He's like, serve, and the dragon keeps coming, and then he figures it out and yells halt or something like that. Again, just like one of those cool things. Like if you're a book fan,
I didn't even pick up on that. It happened too fast. I was trying to read subtitles. And
I went back for it. I was like, wait, did he just say Dohaeris? That's not halt. But then I was like, wait, they said it in the subtitles.
Yeah. Cool. So let's get into Aemond and the pig. Does he end up having a nickname like the pig prince or something like that?
This doesn't happen in the. He doesn't have a dragon, and he kind of gets. It's mentioned that he like gets picked on, but there's no like specific what the jape is.
So my question that I just wrote down, I didn't ask because obviously I didn't know, was why didn't he have a dragon? And I guess the answer gets answered with Laena's kid, the one daughter, that the egg just doesn't hatch.
It's weird. Right? So this is one of the things that a lot of us like book fans wish that there was like a lot more clarity on. We know that all of Rhaenyra's children got cradle eggs. Like, they make it explicit, like, they each got a cradle egg. And I think they each hatched. Like, I think this is Jace's cradle egg. Like, this one hatched.
Right.
But we never hear that Alicent's children get cradle eggs.
Right.
And
so this is my theory about it. Because when we get the marriage proposal later on, that if you're like any egg from Rhaenyra's dragon must be a Rhaenyra egg, right? Like it doesn't just
she
go
says,
to,
I'll give you some of Syrax's eggs. Right.
So Viserys doesn't have a dragon, right?
Correct.
And Alicent doesn't have a dragon. So like how did Aegon even, like someone had to have offered Aegon a dragon egg, or he claimed one.
So I think, again, I'm not sure if this is said or not, but I think his is a cradle egg, Aegon's, or at least I think Aegon is the first person. I don't know if we ever hear it's a cradle egg. But
maybe they had some leftover eggs then, like
for again, we haven't heard this yet, but like there's, I'm not gonna say anything about that.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, Balon's egg was somewhere. Balon's cradle egg was somewhere. So, like, they had maybe some leftover. The baby that died, the heir for a day.
Yeah. Yep.
So, like, that there was an egg. Who knows?
Because that's what Damon took.
Yeah. So I'm just curious of where these eggs are, and like, does Damon's daughter Bela, I think her name was that a cradle egg? Sounds like it was. Yeah. Did that come from whatever the bloodworm? Like, did the bloodworm lay those eggs? Like, I just curious of how these eggs became in their possession.
This is something that, again, I think they're trying to not be super clear on in the show because it's unclear in the book. So they're, instead of having to come up with an answer, they're saying we'll just leave this vague and not worry about it.
And now it just opens up, why can't Drogon lay eggs?
I will say, I don't know off the top of my head, but there is a very, very complicated Preston Jacobs theory about like genes and how you need the right genes to have dragons. And like the X gene is like the one that can carry the dragon gene. So men are XY, without getting too far into it, men are XY. And if you have one dragon gene chromosomes, like if your X is a dragon X, then you can ride a dragon. And if you have two, then you can hatch dragons. So to along your theory, the whole reason of why does Rhaenyra's children all have dragons is, well, she's the one with two dragon X streams. So all eggs around her are just going to start hatching, right? So people think it's because of the children, but it's just because her children are around her. And then they can ride dragons because they inherited the X gene from their mother. So they can all ride dragons because they all had to get one of the two. So he has a super complicated like video series of mapping the entire Targaryen family tree of how the genes would have to work for this to, but I think it makes sense, partially makes sense. Again, it's been a while since I watched that, but.
All right, moving on. My next note I have is that Alicent's a psycho. Oh, she walks in on Aegon jerking off. Yeah. What a weirdo.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Again, that sounded like, it's something I could see like, he's like a Joffrey kind of, right? But like not as cruel, just more of like a fuck it. I'm royal. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
He kind of reminds me of like I'm not the heir, but I'm royalty, so I'm going to enjoy being royalty, but not really have any responsibility. So fuck it, I'm going to jerk off out the window. So she basically tells Aegon like, you better nut up because Rhaenyra's coming for your head.
One of our friends even texted about that. How does Alicent not acknowledge Aegon jacking off?
Yeah.
One of our friends texted that. It's because and the reason why is because she has bigger concerns, right? She wants to be able to blame.
She's not worried. Like, fine, finish yourself off later, but we got work to do.
So before that, she's talking to her daughter.
Yeah, the daughter looks like she's 17 years old. That was just a mental note of mine. The daughter looked super old, and she looks older than Aegon.
Her daughter's weird as shit, dude. Play with a centipede.
And she said something really strange too.
Like he doesn't have.
She's talking about like the legs on the rings,
the back ring,
and then the last line was
it's
like
blind. She's saying the thing's blind.
The last line I think she said was, "It'll have to grow wings." I'm pretty sure, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Do you have it up right now? Could you?
I have it up. I can get to there.
Who comes in to talk to her then?
Weird. Alicent's talking to her, and then Aemond comes in and tells them about like the pig joke.
About the pig joke, right? I'm pretty sure she says it'll have to grow
60
wings.
rings, 2 pairs of legs on each. That's 240.
Yeah, keep going.
The last rings has no legs at all, but it was a pig. You will have a dragon one day. You'll have to close an eye.
That was weird. You'll have to close an eye.
No, it cuts to Alicent and Viserys, and she says they made wings for it, apparently, and a tail. But she's talking about the pig.
So the weird line was, you'll have to close an eye for it.
Yeah, weird.
And I'm just like, the only thing we've really got about, like, opening or closing an eye is Bran. And, like, is she a third eye kind of person? Because we know that Daemon from Dunk and Egg is a green dreamer. And
again, it's something that we don't get at all in the books, but that's kind of what I'm getting to. Is like she's like a weird, like there's something's magical with you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I got that too. And they don't really mention that in the books. They say that she's kind of like plump and not like super attractive, but like she's a nice girl. It's kind of like all we really get about her.
Yeah.
In the books.
So I'm curious about Aemond. I'm curious if he's going to become really jealous and angry in the future. because of not having a dragon, people picking on him. Like at some point, is he gonna freak out? What's next?
So then it goes to her with Viserys, and she's basically telling him about the Aemon thing, and she confronts him about like they're bastards. She doesn't say it, but she's like
she's implying it as much as she can without treason.
Yeah, so I think it comes up to Viserys a few times here. What do you think about like the way that Viserys is handling this?
Viserys just is. I mean, everybody gives him the. Everyone that talks about it is like, well, he's just blindly doing it because he's not going to cut Rhaenyra. He's not going to take. I mean, he easily could. He has another heir. Like he could kick her out and exile her and her children and just move on to Aegon.
One thing we skipped over that I think is really like interesting, and again, never mentioned in the books. Alicent says like, "Hey, here's why this is important." When she catches Aegon jerking off. And he's like, I don't care. Like, cool, she's the heir. Awesome.
Yeah.
And she's like, this like
I won't challenge her. He's like, you have to challenge her.
Well, that's what I wrote. You have to, but like she's saying that again, I think in modern times, because like we're so like we forget about the gender differences sometimes.
Vote for it.
Well, I think we forget about the gender differences sometimes. What Alicent's saying here is like, when Viserys dies, there was a large population that's just not going to be okay with her being a woman and going to pick you no matter what, even if you don't want it, right? That's what she's saying here, which is the same thing Otto told her. I think she uses like the exact same line that Otto told her.
Yeah, she's taking everything that her dad trained her for, and now she's taking his place. Like,
I think she's taking it a step far, though.
Dude, my note was she's a psycho. Like, I'd have to go back and watch that scene again, but she scared me. The way she was like, coming at him with this, like this is the first time you guys have talked about it. Yeah. It couldn't have been.
But again, I think what I was thinking, I agree. She came off like way too aggressive. But what I was thinking to myself is, if you think about this as her saying that because of what Otto said, right? Doesn't matter what you want. The realm won't accept Rhaenyra. It's gonna come to blows, and at that point, she has to kill your kid. So
yeah,
we're lingering on it.
It's just weird. Like she's had 14-ish years, maybe 15 years of grooming Aegon.
How they not talked about it yet?
You've had this like obviously we had to see this conversation. Did she have to come off as a psycho? Like she'd be like, "Hey, remember what we talked about? You're gonna be a challenger one day, even if you don't like it." But
yeah. It's one of those things where the kid was like, "Okay, mom, yeah, sure, I'll brush my teeth." Like, I hear that again. Like, you're gonna be there one day. Like, okay, mom, yeah, sure. But this is like, no, for real. Wake the fuck up. Like, it's
right.
Yeah.
Maybe she's just tired of him being a slapdick. I mean, he's literally jerking off out the window. Like,
yeah.
So maybe that's why she flipped. It's like you're a slapdick. Get off the window. Like, tighten up. So then we get to the yard, right? The fighting scene in the yard.
There's a scene with Alicent and Kristen just out, like they're walking together.
Yeah, and Kristen just motherfucks Rhaenyra, calls her a cunt.
Yeah, it's like clear we're not on her side anymore.
It's pretty crazy that Alicent like stops and like, yo, you can't say that.
She's saying like we're not anti-Rhaenyra, we're just like we're doing things. It's weird because
she's anti-Rhaenyra. I don't believe that.
I think what they're trying to get across in that scene is that she's kind of like anti-Rhaenyra in the way that Stannis is anti-Renly. Like
because he's doing things the wrong way.
It's wrong. I'm right. Like, yes, right. My child is rightful heir. Your children are bastards. If you just have
there's another time where that gets brought up too.
I think if Alicent just like if Rhaenyra just had the first kid, was just blonde and purple eyes. Yeah. Alicent's like,
all right, fine. It's Valerian's.
Again, in the books, it doesn't. I feel like in the books, it doesn't make it seem like this. Alicent is very like, I want my blood on the Iron Throne. But I think she's giving her a Stannis vibe here, where it's I agree. It's just not right.
I agree.
Anymore.
Well, that is implied too in a Larys conversation later on, where Larys is like, well, what do you expect the king to do? Like, it's his daughter. She was like, I wouldn't do that. I would do it because it's the right thing.
Well, I think it also comes up when Rhaenyra, we're jumping all over, but I think we can just skip over some of the stuff when we get to it later then. But like when Rhaenyra offers like a marriage pact between Helena and Jace, they're only, To me, that's a great offer. The only reason Allison won't do it is because she knows he's a bastard, and she's not going to marry her son to a bastard. Right.
Because of the honor of it.
It's not true. My daughter's highborn. I'm not marrying him to a fucking bastard. Yeah, exactly.
Right. You could even see. I'm surprised Viserys allowed them to leave that.
I had to note that Allison clearly just runs this shit now. It's like Cersei. She's just.
He doesn't even have an arm. Like she's like manhandling him around in the chairs. Yeah. He looks awful. Yeah. I mean, I can't even believe he's still alive. I had him dead to rights last episode. I'm really curious at how much longer he lasts. Long enough, I'm sure. But
so in that, we're kind of skipping around. But in the Allison and Aemon scene, the other thing is she's like, it was Jace and Luke, wasn't it? And or she's like, who was it? And he's like, it was Jace and Luke. But it's clear that it wasn't them. He was behind it. And she knows he's behind it and says, like, you can't do this. Like, you can fuck with your brothers in the house, but outside, one team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You guys got to stick together. You're teammates.
Coming up is one of the coolest scenes, I think, in the episode. It's where we see Vhagar.
The yard scene was awesome.
We're not there yet. We get a cut. We skip to Pentos, which is weird. We never
right.
The only time we've ever really seen Pentos is the first ever episode with Dany.
Dude,
right? And
that
Viserys.
dragon was huge.
Oh, it's so big. Just we never really get a wide shot of it either, but you just see how big it is by Lainas on the back of it.
You get Caraxes riding next to it, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
And its wings were different too. Like the makeup of, I'm pretty sure it was. What's the dragon's name? Vhagar?
The other thing is Caraxes. We get some cool shots of like head-on Caraxes flying. It's like he's like an X-wing.
Yeah.
It's get like front wings up, back wings down. like seriously, if you look at it, his wings make an X because Caraxes has like the fins on his back. He makes an X. He does like the whole. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. It kind of what? It's just kind of like Daemon's in Pentos. Did he just like run away to Pentos? Like,
when him and Lena get married, they just basically go on a honeymoon and they just ride their dragons all over.
And they have two and about to have a third kid, and it's like
it's weird. They stop in Pentos and they stay there for an extended period of time because Lena has the twins there.
So they stop traveling.
The twins are like
they're twins.
Have to be like they're twins.
Oh, okay.
But they have to be like 7 at least here, right? Like. Again, in the books, like they have the twins and then they leave Pentos like a year later or whatever, right? Or like they go back to Driftmark like Lena wanted, and that's where she dies.
Okay.
In the book, she dies on Driftmark, so like they're not in they're in Pentos for like a little bit, and they kind of like make a treaty. They kind of like make some truce with this guy, kind of like they're setting up here, but like they don't stay in Pentos for an extended period of time.
So what's this guy in Pentos? Pentos guy wants protection from the Triarchy. Yeah. And that's basically
who have like it's been 10 years. Daemon kind of said like, hey, I'm king now, and just left, fucked off, didn't do anything. It's even like when he shows up in the throne room, Viserys like, who holds the stepstones? And Daemon says like crabs, the tides, crabs, and a bunch of
dead people that I left.
Yeah. So it's like, well, they just took it back over because everybody left. Like we had no shit. So yeah, this guy's like, help us, we want to be on your side. And it gets brought up in the small council chamber too, I think.
And Daemon just wants no part. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Daemon does want parts, and Lena does want parts.
Yeah, the mystery behind Daemon's goofy.
Yeah, so then they have they have the meeting where they're in there's like the dinner, but again, I think that's kind of like setting up like just kind of where they're at and what the point of it is. Then we get the Lena and Daemon scene like up in the bedroom, or he's like reading books and she's like, let's go home, and he's like, no, I don't want to go home.
Right.
So I'm wondering, again, like we don't get into this in the books. It seems like he wants to be here for a reason. He doesn't want to leave here for a reason.
Right.
And then we hear you're in the library reading these books. Like, is the only reason he's here is because he's looking for something in these books? That's the only thing I can think. That's my theory at the moment. Working theory.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out if he's just trying to find another way to marry Rhaenyra again. And now he doesn't have another wife, so I'm gonna stick strong that something's going to happen to Laenor, and then it's going to be Rhaenyra and Uncle Daemon. Somehow they're going to be endgame as we get into the Civil War. At least they're going to be fighting together.
So another thing I was wondering was, Daemon has been impotent up to what we've seen in the show. And again, that's something that's not in the book at all. But like, if he can't have sex, then where do these kids, are they his kids? Like in the books, like it's not even a question. They're his twins with Lena. But like, the show has been making it seem like he can't have sex. Like he couldn't have sex in the first episode with Mysaria. He didn't have sex
with that girl? What do you mean?
He was trying to, but he like pulls out because he's like fat mousing her. couldn't get his dick hard. And then the director said in the after show that like the reason he didn't have sex with Rhaenyra was because he couldn't get it up. Again, I think it's more interesting if it's like more of like a moral reason why he couldn't.
Yeah.
But then like when he goes to Rhea Royce and she like the wife who he kills with the rock, right? She says like, I always knew you couldn't finish, right?
And she's like, oh, did you finally come to consummate our marriage?
Which maybe means he was impotent then. So like it seems like they're playing with this whole like he can't have like he's impotent thing, or he has
erectile dysfunction.
It's kind of what I'm playing with. Like in the book, like it's not even a question. Like they're clearly his twins. But I wonder if that's going to be a thing, especially because the one daughter says like, "Father doesn't even love me" at one point, right? Like something like that. I kind of took it in the scene as like, because I'm not a dragon rider, he doesn't like me as much as my sister. Not like he just doesn't like either.
Yeah. It's kind of weird why he doesn't want to go home. And again, I think he either doesn't want to see Rhaenyra because he really wanted to just be with her.
Yeah.
But then again, like Rhaenyra sounded like she wanted to be with Daemon too. They could have just been like, all right, fuck it. Let's do this thing.
I don't know. You're saying when she's like, why don't you just kill everyone and take me away then?
Well, I thought she said, she said that sarcastically. Like, you're not just going to take me to Dragonstone and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like
you can't just keep doing this, showing up and fucking everything up. Yeah, it's kind of how I took it.
Yeah. But I think in the back of her mind, she might have been like, man, this may be what I actually want to do, but we can't do it because I have a duty to do.
So I'll say this, keep an eye out. And I noticed, I was looking for it in the last episode. I didn't notice it in this episode, but I don't think it happened. Rhaenyra hasn't worn the Daemon necklace since he left her in Flea Bottom.
Interesting.
Like all last episode 5, not once did she wear the Daemon necklace. All
none this episode either, I'm assuming.
I don't think so. Again, I wasn't keeping an eye out for it, but I don't think so.
Yeah. All right, we have to be at the yard.
Then we get the yard scene.
All right, I thought the yard scene was one of the coolest scenes.
Super cool scene.
Even just like the kids training, like Aegon actually like fine. He's on like a little dummy hay thing, but moving around, got some agility, you know. But then it's just like, I mean, Viserys watching over top. You got Lionel the hand. And then Harwin walks up to watch his boys not getting trained. He's like, this is bullshit. Like, train my kids too, basically. And Kristen's like, why do you care so much about these little...
Yeah. I think I will say they did a great job of like making everyone look aged up. Like Lionel looks aged up. Viserys looks aged up. Even Christian Cole, who's like was young and is still young.
Like a little bit of a clean cut. Yeah, it looks maybe a little
something looks different.
A little bit bigger, maybe like
he's changed his style in the 10 years. Yeah,
he's a dick though. You fucking dick.
So in the yard they have Aegon go.
He's so butthurt that Rhaenyra didn't marry him. He's so butthurt.
So yeah, this is one of the things I think they're doing. I think it's a sign that the show's doing a good job. I was 100% Team Green. So like reading the books the whole time, I'm Team Black the whole time. So Team Black is Rhaenyra, Team Green is Alicent. I'm Rhaenyra's side basically the whole time in the books. There's like Alicent kind of seems like a bitch. In the show, last episode, I was 100% Team Green, right? And it was mostly because it's weird. I saw like half and half. Some people had the reaction I did, where Christian Cole says like, "I love you, run away with me," and Rhaenyra's like, "Go fuck yourself." Yeah. You think the kingdom's worth a crate of oranges? Like some people thought like Christian Cole was in the right, and a lot of people thought like, who the fuck do you think you are, Christian Cole?
Yeah.
So some people thought like Rhaenyra didn't really do anything wrong. I think what you said, and a lot of people, I've seen people say the same thing, where like she's thinking of the prophecy in that. Right. I think that kind of lightens the blow onto Christian a little bit. But that kind of got me on Team Christian. And I was just kind of like on Alicent's side in general. I think at the end of like she kind of got lied to. Laurie's kind of told her like, "Hey, people are kind of playing you a little bit," and she was kind of getting wise to it.
He's still playing on her side. He's still playing her too. Like Larys is a crazy character.
So we're gonna talk about that. But I think I was on Alicent's side at the end of the last episode, and like immediately Christian just like. I was on his side, and he calls Rhaenyra a cunt, and I'm like, nope, I'm on Rhaenyra's side again. Like, I'm just like, I'm gonna be so flippy, like wishy-washy back and forth. I'm sure.
So neutral right now. Like, I don't even know because I don't like either. I don't really like once Rhaenyra was like awesome, and then started like lying and becoming a little bit more grayish of a character.
Yeah,
Alicent, you could tell something was wrong with her. Then she kind of flipped the switch, like, and now she seems like a psycho. Rhaenyra just seems like she's doing whatever she wants and she seems like a liar. Like,
yeah,
I don't trust Rhaenyra as far as I could throw her. I'm really rooting for. I was rooting for Harwin. I thought Harwin was going to be the man. I was.
Yeah. Again, I think I'm just like that. I'm a sucker for the nice guy, and Christian Cole was kind of the nice guy last episode, and Harwin
Kristen
was the
Cole
nice
let
guy
me
this
down.
episode.
Kristen was going to be our dunk, and he let us down. Which I think again, this is why the story is so great, because once I start to like a character, they fuck up or they do something that I don't like. But it doesn't ruin the story. It just ruins my. It doesn't even ruin it. It just changes my.
And what they do makes sense. It makes sense why Christian Cole is a dickhead now. Again,
absolutely.
One of the problems, again, like I feel like there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about the show in general, but like one of the things I have a general problem with is because of the time jumps, they're getting away with not wrapping things up. Like there needs to be a conclusion. How the fuck did Christian Cole not get in trouble for he murdered somebody at a ball? Like,
right, and it's not even mentioned
in the books. This isn't a tournament, right? So again, I'm cool with them moving it to a feast, but you got to explain how Christian Cole really gets away with with murder.
Yeah,
gets away with murder.
You mentioned what it would have been like. He tried to like kill.
You just got to drop that line in passing somewhere here to kind of make.
But
it
like you said, you jumped 10 years. Like we can't. You just can't. You can't go back. And we've talked about that with just like the littler time jumps.
But again, like where you say like we jumped 10 years, we can't go back. It reminds me, and I'm sure I've made you watch it, but there's a video called like Season 8 pitch meeting where like a guy pretends to be pitching Season 8 of Game of Thrones to HBO.
Yeah, you've definitely made me watch it. It's like an hour long too.
No, it's like 10 or 15 minutes. But there's a part where they're like, so we're gonna do this, and they're like, wait, why don't you just take more time to explain it? And they're like, no, we only have 8 episodes. Like you can have more episodes. Like, no, we only have 8 episodes. That's what I feel like you're doing. You're like, well, there was a time jump, so they couldn't explain it. Well, I'm like, well, hold on, HBO didn't make that was my whole
point.
Yeah.
I just said this. I was like, they didn't need to rush. Like, just give us another season. I'm not in any rush. Like, just keep making this shit. I mean, I get it that character or actors get older and you don't have a whole lot of time.
I'll say I think the reason is they were worried that people wouldn't be interested. I think they were really worried people would not be interested in season 1 because there's not a lot of dragon on dragon action.
Sure.
Right. A lot of the dragon fighting won't start happening until like the dance kicks off after season 1. So I think they're trying to rush through
season 1 to get to the war. That makes sense.
But I think now that we're seeing how much people really liked it, I think you're right. And they definitely could have made this 15 episodes at least. Maybe not 2 seasons, but you could have got 5. Like I think they could have got 5 episodes out of between last episode and now.
Yeah. We skipped 10 years. Like I just wanted to see how the marriage of Rhaenyra, we don't get any of that stuff. Like, how did Rhaenyra did they actually try to be husband and wife? Like, do we get
how did Daemon get married? We don't see Daemon getting married at all.
And was anybody at that wedding? Was Rhaenyra there? Was she happy for her? Was she jealous? Like all these questions
they're giving shout outs to the book fans, but in the book, like. And they mentioned this, and that's what I'm saying when they're giving shoutouts. They mentioned that Laena had been betrothed to the son of the Sea Lord of Braavos.
Right, I recalled.
This is a problem. In the books, Daemon kills this guy. Daemon basically has to mock him openly until he like
fights him.
Till he says, "Daemon, duel me." He basically like makes fun of him until he has to ask Daemon for a duel, or else
which is awesome. That's
and then
really
Daemon
cool.
Fucks him up. That could be half an episode, right? So again, that
could at least be like the climax of an episode for sure.
And I'm not upset that they skipped it. I'm not upset that they skipped it because it's something that's not super important. But when you're saying like, could you really have made 10 episodes up to this point? Yes, because of stuff like that. That's like 3 sentences in the book that you can make into half an episode. Right. I think.
Well, and just like we got a little bit of at the feast, Daemon kind of like interested in Laena. It didn't really show that he was going to marry her from there. Like he's just kind of giving her some like sex me eyes type of thing. So like, does he actually, well now, like I didn't know that he goes and challenges her betrothed. Like that's pretty fucking cool. That shows that he actually really liked her and whatnot. And
exactly.
It's just, there's so much complexities that 10 years, I don't know. I let's get over it. Let's move on next.
Yeah. We got to get back to the timeline. We're going too long. In the yard, so they get Aegon versus Jacaerys, and Jace holds his own for being younger. Again, we don't know the age gap exactly, but he did pretty good.
Harwin's coaching him up, trying to.
Again, it's been getting pretty obvious, but you like to see it, and then it's also like kind of funny, like Christian. It's like a dad at soccer practice with Harwin saying like, "Hey, why don't you give my kids like, yeah, they might not be as good, but give them like the same attention. They deserve the same like practice time at least, like in the scrimmage. Come on." type thing. It's what they're saying. But I think it's funny once they start like when it's over and Harwin and Cole start yelling at each other and they're like Harwin starts coming up like picking up the swords.
Yeah.
Right when he's walking by Cole, there's a part where Cole, as Harwin's picking up the swords, right as Harwin goes to walk past Cole drops his sword. Like he's holding a wooden sword, and because Harwin is picking up swords, he like throws his sword on the ground, and Harwin goes and picks it up.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, go pick this up, bitch.
I wanted them to sword fight instead of Harwin just beat the shit out of him. Kristen gives him a little bit of a day too. Like I got it that you've never actually had to fight anybody, Harwin, but I'm actually been in combat, and nobody cares how old you are there.
And I don't like how, again, as a book fan, like Cole would be fucked up. Harwin is supposed to be like the mountain. Like the way he's talked about in the books is he's the strongest man by far in all of Westeros. Like makes grown men look like boys. He tackles him and hits him in the face like over and over, and Christian's like smiling and makes a witty comment. Like you'd be knocked the fuck out if the thing about the mountain doing that to you.
He would have crushed his skull.
He would be fucked. He'd be dead. Yeah, like I don't know, but yeah, cool scene in general.
Yeah, cool scene. I thought it was a great scene. I think. What's the next?
Rhaenyra goes through a secret room and listens in on a strong conversation.
Right. So it's Lionel just giving Harwin shit and basically like, I know you fathered those kids. Yada.
One super cool thing about this scene, I had written it down just because I thought it was like a cool line. He says something about like, the only thing keeping your head on your shoulders is the willful blindness of an old man or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And I wrote that down because I thought it was just like a poetic line. Larry says the exact same thing to Allison.
So he's listening somewhere too.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Larry's had to have heard this conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's so badass that
is pretty cool. I didn't think about that as well, but I know the line willful blindness was said multiple times. You know what also I thought was cool was that Rhaenyra wasn't going to hear this conversation. Rhaenyra was going to have a moment with Harwin. She didn't give a shit about.
You're right. She was trying to sneak into Harwin's room and his dad was already there. Good call. Yeah. I was like, where is this? Like, does she go here and listen to like this like strong meeting room?
She was.
You're right.
And we would have got a little. We don't get anything but the goodbye between the two of them. Like this would have been our like they would have probably had a conversation. They maybe would have kissed. Like you might have seen that. Like she actually loves Harwin, and now we don't.
There's that look where he like wants to kiss her. He like looks at the baby, looks at her, and she looks at Jace, and it basically says like, nope, he can't know. But then he knows anyway, which sucks. And again, like to me, that was even worse because I know as soon as he gets back to Harrenhal, he's gonna fucking burn to a crisp. Like I'm like, no, like please just like kick James out and kiss her real quick. Like, we don't get much of Harwin, but like that is like again.
I really was curious of like she jetted out of that room to go talk to him, and then she never got to because Lionel was there and just beat him up. But so then I got her tits are sore, so she got something to put on her chest, and Laenor comes in.
This kind of felt like a weird, out of place joke to me. Like felt like a Family Guy joke where her nipples start like milking in the middle of the council chamber.
We're not even there yet, are we? Are we there? Is it the council?
Oh, you're right. I guess like there's two scenes about that. Like,
yeah. Well, she's about to just rip Laenor for being a deadbeat.
I don't know enough about the female anatomy. I was wondering if this was like a way of them. I was wondering if this was a way of them doing a time jump. Like, it seemed like they were saying her milk dried up. So I was wondering, like, oh, is this I think 6 months later and she's not breastfeeding anymore or something? But clearly she is.
It's only a couple days, I think. And
but I was wondering if that was, like, what they were trying to do with that.
So I believe just in, like, old times, they had wet nurses, right? So Rhaenyra wouldn't actually have to breastfeed.
Oh, gotcha.
So I feel like all she really does is kind of pump and dump. They're not bottling her breast. They're just trying to like get it out.
They're just trying to get her. They're trying to get the milk to stop pumping as soon as possible. Gotcha.
I don't know. It's a Google, and I'm not even gonna say it. I feel like if you're not using it, you lose it type of thing comes into effect.
I think you're right.
But I'm not too sure.
I'm not sure either. There's no ladies here, but I think it works the other. I think it works the other way too, right? That's how Lysa. Like,
right. If you keep using it, you
can just keep going as long as maybe not as long as you want, but for a while.
I mean, Robin was like an 8-year-old up there.
Yeah.
So she basically is like, Laenor, like, you haven't been around, like, help us out. And she's playing the game. She's basically like, all these rumors are going around because you're spending all your time with Carl, and I have 3 kids that look like Harwin Strong, and
yeah, we're not guarding the secret very well. Step it up.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm about to go on this adventure, so it doesn't matter. And she's like, no, that won't look good.
No, you're fucking not.
Yeah, I command you.
And then I think it's the council, and basically Alicent and Rhaenyra hate each other. We get the marriage. We talked about this too.
So really cool thing. There's a few really cool little book mentions I'll go through quick. First one, they're talking about the Tullys because they're talking about the Blackwood Bracken.
Right, and the 2 families that always fight each other.
Did you catch Lord Tully's name?
No.
This is a stupid Sesame Street Easter egg by George. The Lord Tully's name is Grover, and I think he has a son, Kermit, and there's an Elmo. There's a Grover, Elmo, and Kermit who are all
Tully.
Relatives who are all Tullys.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
But yeah, we heard Grover, so we got Grover's name. People were wondering if they would change the name for the show, but they didn't. We got Grover.
That's funny.
I forget the relations, but yeah, we got all 3 of those. But yeah, they're he's brought up because he's supposed to be settling this Blackwood dispute, and it's funny because
so Alicent basically is like, let them figure it out on their own, and Rhaenyra's like, no, we should look into this.
Yeah, I don't know if that one was Alicent. I
kind of take it like Alicent and Rhaenyra were the only 2 people that talked.
They were going back and forth. Yeah, so I kind of took it as
Lord Beesbury doesn't even know what fucking conversation he's in. Get his ass out of there. What the fuck's he doing?
And there's one person I don't know who it is. There's Tyland, who's
Lannister,
but there's somebody sitting
right?
next to Tyland. Also, why is Alicent even here? Like Queen?
Why is Alicent or Rhaenyra there?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
But sure, and they're the only 2 talking, which is super strange. But why does Rhaenyra care about checking in on this matter? And Alicent gives like of course you want to look into it. Is it just because Alicent didn't want to look into it? Or are they just...
Yeah. Well, it seems like Alicent is doing the Viserys thing where it's like, let them handle it. I don't want to deal with it. Move along. It seems like at least what they're trying to do is make Rhaenyra
look like she cares. Yeah. And I do agree with you there. We get the Stepstone news again. That's just the Triarchy's back, and they got Dorne. And
yep.
I like the line from Viserys here is a deal with the Martell would leave you unhappy or something like that.
So this is something that people probably don't know. Martell it's not the 7 kingdoms yet. It's the 6 kingdoms. They still haven't conquered Dorne. They say that the Dornish are in a alliance with the Triarch, and they were earlier. Like when Daemon was down there, he was fighting Dornish people earlier. They didn't really mention it, but yeah. So they're not in yet. But he does mention that they made like a deal at one point or something like that. So
yeah, well, he said you make a deal with them and you're going to be unhappy.
But it kind of also makes sense, like why even in Game of Thrones, like books time, like why people are kind of racist against Dornish people. It's like, well, because they were way later to come into the kingdom with everybody else.
And then here's just the biggest part of Rhaenyra playing the game, trying to legitimize her children by...
Great idea too. Like this would have solved probably a lot of problems. And I'm sure this is brought up in the book. I don't remember who. I don't think it's Rhaenyra who brings this marriage alliance up. Right. I think it's somebody else. She might even be the one that says no to it. I don't remember. But I think something like this has to be brought up at some point.
Yeah. I mean, just as much as it could have solved Rhaenyra's problems, this is now going to be the catalyst for all of the issues, I'm sure. Like the fact she just moved back to Dragonstone. This is going to be fireworks because of this.
What do you mean? This proposal particular?
This marriage proposal, like basically being ignored by Alicent.
That's what's like basically Alicent.
That's what catalyzed her leaving. I don't even know if catalyzed is the word. That's what sparked her from saying like, fuck this, like we're going back to Dragonstone.
Because it's the official on the record. Like not super official.
It's official. Alicent is not team. It's official. Alicent's not team Rhaenyra annormore.
Yeah, it's like the fine. And we've kind of known that, but this is like the on the record.
Yep. Yeah, and it's in front of people. Like she said, I was made look a fool in front of the whole council. She's like, fuck this.
So then it follows Alicent with Viserys talking about this. She's saying, fuck no. They go into his room. She takes care of him. Lionel comes in. I quit. He's like, I can't do this. I'm conflicted.
Well,
I basically have conflicted interests.
This?
I have conflicting interests, and he's like, "Say it." And he's
well,
like,
it's also pretty interesting. Is the whole, and I think Laris says this too when he's with Allison, which is the next scene, is that Lionel can't be the hand because he can't give unbiased advice, but Otto was obviously giving unbiased advice for a long time. Like, is it truly a requirement for the job? Then it's going to be really hard to find someone to
well,
be
I think
the hand.
I think Allison's actually one that says it. She's self-aware. In that scene with Laurie's, she says like, "I gotta call back Otto," and I guess to your point, Larry says he wouldn't be unbiased either, and she's like, "No, but he'd be unbiased to my side.
He'd be biased to me. Like he would help exactly. Me." Yeah. Laris is a rat. I mean,
again, they're really good at making. I'm gonna go back to the Viserys scene real quick. They're really good at making the scenes tense. Like when he's trying to quit, and he's like, "Why are you trying to quit?" And he's like, I can't do it." And he's like, "Why?" And you're like, "Is he gonna say it? Like, what's he gonna say?" And he doesn't. He's like, "I'm not gonna say it." And like Viserys has to know what he was gonna say, and he's like, "Fine, if you're not gonna say it, if you're not gonna be the one to blow like." Basically, it's like, here's the button for nukes. Hit the nuke button, and then it's on. Viserys just doesn't want it to be on him. He's like, it's on you then.
All right, keep working.
You're not going to hit it? I'll put it back in my pocket.
All
then
right,
get back in line.
Keep working.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, we'll wait till I die, then somebody can rush and press this button.
Oh my God, Allison can't wait to send out those ravens to every corner of the realm.
So the one thing I noticed was
is going to pull a Stannis. She's going to pull a Stannis. Allison Hightower is Stannis Baratheon.
It's making me like Allison more because I like Stannis.
Yeah.
So then it's interesting how they make people, they like follow, you see the characters go from scene to scene. Like Allison literally walks from with Viserys down the hall. You see the whole thing. A maid, I'm only pointing out this is like a weird shot of like a maid. Once Allison walks by, the maid like gives like a double take at her and then like runs away towards Viserys' room. And I was like, to myself, I'm thinking, oh, she's running to tell Larys something. Like Larys is up. But Allison walks into the room with Larry, and Larry's just sitting there. And you're like, oh, damn, these two have become friendly over 10 years.
Yeah. How about that maid that walks in and then gets, like, shooed away?
Larry doesn't say a fucking word while there's somebody else in the room.
It's definitely...
Like, he knows.
That was definitely a Rhaenyra spy.
Yeah?
I mean, that was just my...
I feel like she's not playing the game too well, like, on that level yet.
I mean, we just don't know. But that was my thought, was like, Well, that's exactly what they thought. Like, we're not saying a word in front of... But it's also got to be super weird. Like, why is Laris meeting with the queen right now? Like, that's got to be like, that's fucking weird. This guy is weird as fuck. Like, everybody in court needs to know that this guy is weird as fuck.
Yeah, so in the books, again, it's one of the things where, like, when Lionel Strong's introduced episode 1, I kept wondering when Harwin and Laris were going to show up, because in the books, when Lionel comes to court, so does his two children, and Harwin goes in to become a captain of the Gold Cloaks, and Laris becomes a torturer. So Laris has been around the castle and is like a torturer, but again, to your point, like, why is a torturer hanging out with the queen?
Yeah. What do they talk about? Basically, why...
This is where he says willful blindness, which gives me, like... He's like,
he was listening. He was listening in. What's next? Does he go down to the prison next, or...
She basically says... He says, I always know everything, but right now you're the only... You know something I don't know.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, your dad tried to quit, and you said tried, and she's like, yeah, he said no.
Right.
And he goes into the dungeons and he finds a murderer, a deviant, and a traitor to the crown.
What's the definition of a deviant?
I think it has to do with sexual,
boy diddler?
Yeah,
or a child diddler?
Yeah, at least diddler of some
sort. That's what
the
connotation kind of made it seem like.
Again, there's no... I think
like you hear of a sexual deviant, like that's context.
Yeah, for sure. There's no reason for why these guys have these roles, but again, to me, this is a callback to something we just read in Clash of Kings, where Tyrion tries to get Jaime freed, and he sends a thief, a mummer, a murderer, and one guy like pretends to be Edmure's voice, right? I think it's just a callback to that, like picking people from the dungeons. It's exactly what he does. But then
any reason? Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Then he says, you guys have to give something up and you'll get your freedom in return. And what they have to give up is their tongues, because you're not going to be able to speak about this. No one's ever going to hear about what happened here. There's got to be a nickname for this group of people that works for Laris. The Unspoken. They're going to be like the Unspoken or something like that. So the book says is one of the things was like, oh, did Daemon do this so that he could be closer to Rhaenyra, kind of like what you were saying. Like, was he behind the fire? Was Corlys behind the fire because this was a man who cucked his son?
Right.
There's a bunch of different like theories of who's behind this, but Laurie's is one that I never thought of because like he doesn't really seem to.
Well, it's weird too. Like, what's his angle? He's now the heir to Harrenhal.
That's the motivation that's put forward in the books, but here it seems like it's because he says it's because it's what
he wants Alicent to owe him a favor.
But it's what she says she wants. I think in this conversation that we're at now chronologically, she says like, "Oh, I wish they would like both die. It would make everything so much easier." Like something along those lines. And then later he's like, "Well, your wish came true." And she's like, "I didn't want like that." She's like crying, like she didn't ask him to do this. She just kind of insinuated, and he took it upon himself.
Well, even like you say shit like when you're angry, you're like, "Oh, fuck them! Like I wish they were dead." And then like you actually didn't want that, but there was a moment where he walked up to the cell and it kind of zoomed in on his cane. Was there some? I
think there's like a scare. It looks like a scarab, like some type of beetle. The same thing that was on the people's chests. Like again, they don't mention that.
Yeah,
that
I was just curious what that was. What's next?
There's a Laena giving birth scene.
Dude, oh my god.
Yeah, so she's giving birth. Basically, same Emma Aaron deal.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy too is she was like, "I'm not going out like some bed nerd. Like I'm going out on a dragon. You're gonna kill me. It's gonna be like." She's kind of like a warrior.
There was one Daemon Laena scene we skipped. That we covered some of it while we were talking. Basically, the thing that we skipped was they get news of the baby, and Daemon says, "Oh, does it look like Daemon knows?" Yeah, everyone fucking.
They were
knows.
drinking up on the roof, and she was like, "Look, I know you don't love me," type of thing. He's like, "Stop, I do," and I think he does like her. I think he really does because.
I might not have caught this. I might have been writing down the Joff Laenor thing. So what happened? What do they say there about? Does she say about the baby? About like I'm not gonna die. No, like that?
Well, she gave the news, and then she was like, "Can we please go back to Drift?" She just does it again. She's like, "Can we please go back to Driftmark? If I'm gonna die, I want to die there. I'm going out." It doesn't really make sense, but she's like, "I'm gonna go out like a dragon rider," and. She does. I mean, she ends up going out. I don't know what that means in the context of her going home to Driftmark, but she's like, we're more than just guests here at Pentos, basically. Like, let's go be dragons in Westeros.
God, yeah, I got you. I do remember part of that. What I got from that was like she's basically saying like we're not sellswords. Like she's like you're making us out to be glorified sellswords where we're just gonna sell dragons for gold. Like we're better than that. We're old Valyria.
Yeah. Daemon, but to the meat of it,
her giving birth.
Daemon was not going to do what his brother did. You could see it in his eyes.
So I agree, but I will say it's a different situation too. Like Daemon's not the king with a super need for an heir with a male son. Daemon probably does want everybody wants a son, and he has 2 daughters, right? So I'm not saying that there's not pressure to have the son.
Yeah,
but it's not the exact same thing. Like when you're the king and like you need the heir, you know what I mean? Slightly different. But yes, absolutely. But yes, he wouldn't. I don't think he would have done it.
But she just bolted.
She overheard. Yeah,
she's like, "Fuck this."
So I was hoping this would go slightly more like the book. In the book, she gives birth to a baby that is
stillborn,
deformed and monstrous, and maybe has wings
like
and scales.
Like Dany.
And then she lives for 3 days, and then she goes, she goes to walk to try and find Vhagar, and she doesn't make it, or she makes it and dies on the way back, and Daemon finds her on the stairs.
Vhagar doesn't actually burn her to death.
I like that Vhagar does. I think that's a really cool way to have her go out as a badass.
It's a badass way to go.
But I wanted to see the deformed baby. I thought we'd finally fucking see it because I was like, they showed us the fucking cutting in the umbilical cord. Like I was like, ugh. And they showed us the actual cutting the tongues off, and I was like, ugh.
Did you want to see it? Because then it could have Dany could have actually had a deformed baby without Mir Mazdor fucking with it, type of thing.
Well, we know that there's a few other ones in the Targaryen history that have deformed babies, but I want to see. I want to see it.
You know what? Also, I forgot now. Just thinking about Mir Mazdor. The fact that blood magic is the whole key to these dragons.
I thought that too. Like now Laena and somebody just died. Are 2 dragons about to hatch? But then when I saw that, I was thinking like, okay, but then how did all the?
Is Daemon trying to figure out the blood magic? Daemon, that's what he's doing.
Maybe, but then I was thinking like, but then who died to give birth to Rhaenyra's children's dragons, but then I was like, okay, I can't be thinking about this right now. There's an episode going on. Like, I don't know. We're already going too long. Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Daemon wouldn't have done it was my one thing. All right, Harwin, he says goodbye. Harwin goes, gets burned up. We know that it's Larys's weirdos. Larys comes back, talks to Alicent, and I think that's how it ends. Alicent like, I didn't mean to do this, and now it's just like playing like Larys is a big baller in this, and Rhaenyra leaves with Laenor. She's like, let's fucking go. That's kind of the end of the episode.
That scene where Rhaenyra goes to get Laenor to leave, like Carl seems like he's listening.
Sure,
I thought that was like something weird.
Eavesdropping.
And then she's like, bring him.
Well, I think that's why she's okay with him listening, because at the end of it, she was like, he's coming with us, so fuck it, he can hear.
So when I heard, when they showed there's definitely an angle where they make it look like he's listening, like eavesdropping.
Yeah.
And when they showed that angle, I'm thinking like, I wonder if he's working for Larry's, because now I'm thinking, like you're saying, Larry's is the rat. And then when she's like, bring him with us, I wonder if she thinks the same thing and is like, we're going to take care of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would say that would be different than what happens in the books, but it's kind of seemed like what was.
Yeah,
that's kind of the vibe I got.
Just another rat thing. The rat squeaks out onto the hearth of Viserys' room.
Yeah, what's he doing at that point?
I think Alicent's probably yelling at him for something because she's a psycho.
So also, there's a cut of Rhaenyra at Dragonstone, and I was writing a note and. What's she doing at Dragonstone? What's happening? Like there's scaffolding or something? Like what did they show in that scene? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
And yeah, so what the other? So I guess the last thing that we can get you on while I'm pulling this up is the like Larry's monologue at the end when it's like cutting between some of this stuff, right?
I was like barely like making note of what was being said in the monologue.
I'm pretty sure it like reminds me of a combination of "Love is the death of duty" speech from Aemon to Jon, and a combination of Varys telling Tyrion, "I've seen what desire does to men, and I'm glad to have no part of it." But he's talking specifically about parents to children. He's like, "Well, what you will do for your children will be the death of you every time." He's like, "I'm glad I have no part in that." But again, gives me super Varys vibes because of that. I will have no part of the desire. Him, that's like the whole like I'm a eunuch thing. Oh, Viserys is putting on Emma Aaron's ring, is what he's doing when the rat is looking at him.
I didn't even know that was her ring. How would you know that?
I'm trying to find out what Rhaenyra is doing at Dragonstone. It might just be her showing up, and that's what they're showing us. Yeah. So what Larry's is saying is, "What are children but a weakness? A folly, a futility. Through them you imagine you cheat the great darkness of its victory." Basically him saying children are a bad idea. It's like people try and use children to make it so that you persist forever in some form or another. But love stays the hand. Love is the death of duty, is what he's saying.
Yeah, basically. But all right, it's time for me to roll. Good episode. I'm excited to see where the story goes. Shit's about to pop off. Uncle Daemon. I'm really curious about what happens with Uncle Daemon now. He's wifeless again. I'm curious if people will. So there was a little bit where he's like on the roof again, like looking down at Laena's bones burned. We just saw Harwin get burned. Now we see Laena's body burnt. I was kind of hoping like fire can't kill the dragon, but she's not dragon, so bye. I guess she's only half dragon. She's not the dragon.
Her mom's Rhaenys. No Corlys Rhaenys.
No Corlys Rhaenys. Kind of upset about that. Fine, they're chilling.
I think this ep was we got to wrap it up. I think this ep was was good, super good.
It was a lot. I mean, it was
a lot. Clearly, we had so much to talk about, but like I think the jump was a little much. Like I think it was too much. I'm very glad though. At this point, there should be very little jumps at that.
Yeah,
like, no more jumps. Pretty much.
No more.
We're done with that.
The only thing I'm disappointed in was I wanted to see, now that it's confirmed that Rhaenyra and Harwin had a relationship. I just wanted to see it. If it was.
And again, this is where I've heard rumors that maybe we get
flashbacks,
Millie Alcock and Emily Carey again in season 2. I think I saw somewhere that it was confirmed, but I think that's probably fake. I think that they're playing with the idea of doing flashbacks in season 2, and that's something we might be able to get.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm out.
Laurie's awesome, super awesome. Jeff's out. I'll probably have a few things to say.
All right. Have fun. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
All right, now that he's gone, we've already been going for super long, so I'm going to keep this super short. The one thing I definitely want to mention is that Helena, with the bug saying the eye thing, even Jeff thought it was weird. Aemon loses an eye, so she's a green seer, or she has something. She has some abilities. And the last thing is Laurie's. I just love everything with Laurie's. I mean, we said it there. I don't need to say anything else. We know he's a badass. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.